today's video, we're diving into the world of ETTR, or exposing to the right, to uncover its impact on modern photography and whether it remains a valuable technique to use with new digital cameras. Hello and welcome back. So we've had some snow overnight, which is the first time in a couple of years in this area, so I'm super excited about today's video. And we're heading up to a hilltop location with lots of craggy rock formations that should provide good foreground interest, and we've got some pretty dramatic clouds in the sky, some light too, which you might just be able to see behind me. And through the video we're going to be talking about ETTR because I get asked about it a lot on workshops, so I think it's quite a significant topic as well for today's video because we've got a lot of bright highlights in the snow, so we'll be talking about that as we move through the video. So let's get going. So if you're not familiar with ETTR, let me briefly explain what it is. So exposing to the right, or ETTR as it's known, is a photographic technique where you intentionally expose your image to the brighter side of the histogram to maximise the amount of light captured by the camera's sensor. And this is typically done to achieve better image quality, particularly in situations where the shadow areas are very, very dark. Now, this concept is based on the idea that digital cameras' sensors capture more information on the brighter or right-hand side of the histogram where the midtones and the highlights are recorded. So by intentionally overexposing, you can ensure that the important details are captured in the shadow areas, reducing noise and preserving more information. Later on in post-processing, you can adjust the exposure to bring back the image to the desired brightness levels, making use of all that additional information captured during the initial overexposure. Now, by overexposing, I'm not talking about blowing out the highlights, but rather stopping just short of the edge of the right-hand side of the histogram. So I think we've got a shot. This lovely craggy old tree just covered in snow. There's a snowstorm behind with some light coming over from the left hand side, so I think this could make quite an interesting shot. So let's get set up. So this image is a prime example of how exposing to the right can be problematic because there's a lot of very bright highlights because the sun's coming through to the underside of the clouds on the left, and we've got some very, very dark clouds to the right. The tree is almost silhouetted against the light, even though we will be able to pull out some of that shadow detail in post-production. So the histogram on my camera is pretty much evenly balanced. I've almost got my dark tones touching the left and almost my highlights touching the right. So I don't actually have any room to maneuver the histogram around. So it's a case of getting it as balanced and as neutral looking as possible, and then just lifting those shadows up a little bit in post-production and maybe reducing the highlights if I need to. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take this image now. It's wonderful drama in the sky. This snowstorm we've got in the valley at the back there is just so dark and dramatic against this bright sky to the left, and the snow in the foreground too is wonderful. Now, the term exposing to the right gained traction in the early 2000s as it was popularised on photography forums. But the question is it still relevant today? Because new cameras cope much better with noise and have a much larger dynamic range than they did back in the early 2000s. Well, I guess the short answer is yes, and also no. So let me explain. So whenever we look at the histogram on the back of our cameras, what we're seeing is the JPEG profile that the camera is set to, not the RAW file. And JPEGs are typically more contrasty than RAW files, so the histogram will probably be totally different in camera. That's what we'll see when we import the RAW file into the editing software of our choice. Now, some cameras like mine have a neutral view, or in my case, natural live view, and this is meant to give you a better representation of what the RAW file's histogram should look like in camera. But it isn't really that accurate, and this is where the problem lies, because in my opinion, and certainly with my camera, the risk doesn't always warrant the return I'm gaining by pushing my histogram to the right. Personally, I like to give myself a little bit of wiggle room on the edge of the histogram to be sure I'm not losing any data in the highlights. And the negligible amount of noise I'm seeing in the shadows is completely acceptable in my opinion when exposing a more neutral looking histogram. So I think digital cameras handle noise so much better now than they did 20 years ago. And I think this is a bit of a reason why we might need to think differently about ETTR. Well, I think I probably spent way too long photographing that lone tree, but what a fantastic subject, absolutely wonderful, really dramatic skies too. So now it's time to get up to the top of the hill and hopefully we can make some more shots this evening. Let's crack on. Try not to get wet feet in the process. Ooh, buddy. So as you can probably see, we're getting some snow coming down now, and we're right on the top of this cairn here looking through the valley, and we've got a wonderful snowstorm happening down there as well. We've got light and the clouds are kind of mirroring this rocky outcrop we've got here to the front of us on the left, which helps to make a really interesting composition, and the eye is drawn through these two pinnacles towards the light across the valley, which I think looks really cool. I'm really excited about this shot. I framed it up 16:9. I'm at f14 and I'm exposing for the highlights, and similar to before, both sides of the histogram are almost touching the edges, so it's as neutral, as balanced as I can possibly get. I'm not losing highlights or shadows, so keeping it, from touching the edges, and yeah, just really exposing for the highlights. And the shadows are looking pretty dark in this shot, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of information there to be able to lift those a little bit in post-production. Losing my voice, so cold up here. So we're at 100th of a second, f14, ISO 125, 2-second timer on. Fantastic, really like this. Cloud's absolutely amazing. Something tells me we're going to get a heck of a lot of snow in the next 10 minutes or so. It is so dark over there. I might need to find somewhere I can shelter. For this shot, I thought the 3 vertical pieces of rock would make a great subject. I also like the warm and cool tones in the image. As the sun was setting, I framed up this image, being sure to protect my highlights because the light reflecting off of the snow was incredibly bright. Unfortunately, I never managed to get the clouds in the right place to tie this composition together. Just about to pack up when I noticed this amazing red cloud behind me, so I grabbed my camera and tripod and sprinted up the hill to capture this image. So my conclusions are that exposing to the right offers more margin for error than a more neutral exposure due to the discrepancies between camera histograms and the editing software. Now, I'm definitely not telling you what you should do, but my suggestion would be to only expose to the right if there are no bright highlights present within the scene. Instead, stick to a balanced exposure that looks right on your camera and your histogram for how you want the finished photo to look. Oh, it's chucking it down. For me, preserving highlights is way more important than a very negligible amount of noise that we sometimes see in the shadows. So it's something to bear in mind. Now, all cameras are different, aren't they? My camera is an APS-C camera, and as such, highlight recovery may not be as flexible as perhaps a medium format Fuji GFX camera would be. So I would advise testing out your setup to see what you're happy with. For my tests and for my current use, which is landscape photography, with my setup I see no point exposing to the right unless all of the scene is made of very dark colours, maybe blacks and greys. But do let me know your thoughts in the comments. It'd be great to get a conversation started about this. I love snow. I just love it. In the video up here, I talk about 7 different ways that you can improve your photography, which is well worth a look if you haven't already checked it out. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for further videos like this. If you'd like to support me further, then please consider checking out my photography zine. The link for that's up there and also down in the description. Hope to see you again next week.